Hello YouTube friends, welcome to the Last Homely House and Happy New Year 2024. Here we are, the first video of 2024. But before we go any further, I'd like to thank everybody who joined me for the look back at last year at the Last Homely House on New Year's Eve. It was absolutely lovely to see so many of you in the comments and reply to you all, and just enjoy looking at those clips from last year. All sorts of projects that I made, Festival of Quilts I went to, all sorts of really interesting things that happened last year. So I want to thank everybody very, very much indeed for joining me there. And so here at the Last Homely House, if you're new here, this is my little cottage in the north of England, and I like to make videos for you about crafts and about the things that I do here. I do a lot of quilting, a lot of sewing. In fact, I'm sitting at the sewing machine now, so we've got a sewing project to talk about today. But I do all sorts of other things as well. And last year in May, I started a second channel, which was all about the things that go on in the garden. And I'm looking out into the garden now, and it's looking a bit grey and dreary and rainy out there. But the garden channel is where I talk to you about the pond that I've made with help and the cabin that I'm building. And I can see the cabin from here, and there's lots of new developments coming in 2024 for that area there. So the Last Homely Garden, I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to go and join that. I number all the videos there so you can find them easily. And here at the Last Homely House, I've just put up my calendar and a few days ago, and turning over to the first page, it talks all about starting new projects and going through your stash and looking through what you've got so that you can start the new year with a new project. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. It's just a little project because I've got my big quilt on the board here, which I'm hand quilting whenever I've got a spare few minutes. But it's going to take a long time to finish that one. And I wanted to start with you today a project that I could probably start and finish in one day, just to get my hands sewing again after the busy Christmas and New Year. I had a lovely Christmas and New Year. I saw all of my family and my grandchildren, and it was just lovely to spend time with them and unplug for a little while from all the things that I do here. But I'm really keen to get back now and start, as I say, with this little palette cleanser, this little project that will get me going sewing again, and maybe get that off the board and start stitching that, because I want to do that. So this morning I got out. I've got several boxes like this in the drawer in the drawers next to the sewing machine, and I went through all these little scraps that are in here. A lot of these scraps are the ones I made the terry blocks with, which is what the quilt is that I'm finishing stitching there. And so there's all sorts of colours in here and really quite small pieces. But what I did this morning was I went through all the fabrics and I found everything that was polka dot, that was spotty. And I've pulled out all the spotty pieces. There's probably still loads more in here. There's a big one there. And I'll show you what it is I want to make. I thought I'd got them all, but I keep finding more and more spots in just this one drawer. I'm also finding stripes, which are really rather lovely. So I'm putting the stripes in a separate pile. So just going through, finding dots and giving them a little press. The setup I have here, I've got my iron here, and my ironing board. I've got my sewing machine here so that I can go from one to the other. It's perfect setup. So let's see, are there any more spots? Just when you think you've found all of them, you find another. Okay, so what am I going to do with them? Let me just put those back for now, go through them later. I like having everything to hand. It's fantastic. Spots then, dots. So what I want to make in this very quick project, I'm going to do some machine stitching, but then I'm going to do a little bit of hand stitching. And I want to show you this now. This is a little pouch that I made. I'll show you how it works. It just rolls up. Maybe there are pencils inside, or maybe a sewing kit or something. And it's just a lovely little thing to take with you on your travels. pop it in your bag with a few bits and pieces in. Now, I don't really need to make this, but I've just got a hankering to make something a bit like this. Many years ago, maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago, something like that, I went to India with my daughter Martha, and at this time of year, in fact, which is probably what's put me in mind of this project. Because it's dreary, it's cold, it's wet, it's grey, it's going to be dark in about half an hour. That's what's happening here in the north of England. But over in northwest India, in Rajasthan, it's pretty beautiful. And we chose that area to go to, Martha and I, because that's where a lot of textile crafts happen. They do a lot of printing of fabric, block printing and silkscreen printing. And we went to visit all those places that do that amazing handcraft. And I did bring quite a lot of fabric back with me. And so we were staying in Jaipur at the beginning of our stay, and we stayed in a lovely hotel that had, most of the hotels had a rooftop restaurant, because of course it's warm all year apart from the monsoon season, and so you could sit outside quite easily on the tops of these hotels and have your breakfast, have your evening meal, whatever. We're staying in a lovely place. And so every morning I would go up to the balcony, the rooftop balcony restaurant, and sit and just enjoy the views, but I would sit and do some stitching. And so this is a very, very, very simple little construction here. In fact, I'll show you. So I've got all my spotty fabrics here on my ironing board, and what I've done, I've cut a piece of quilt wadding. Now, if you're a quilter, you've got loads of little bits and pieces like this. I know you have. And so this one, I think, is 15 inches square. I made this one. So I'll just fold it very quickly and show you what it is I'm going to do. Okay, so that's, I'll put a pin in so that I can hold it up. So that's kind of roughly the kind of shape that I'm going to make. So these corners come in, this corner comes up, and then when you close it, that corner comes down, or the whole thing rolls up. So this is bigger than I need it to be, probably. I may not make the pouch that big. So what I'm doing this just now with these spotty fabrics, that's my lining for it. I'm making fabric. That's what I'm doing. So I've got all, I'll just move you out of the way. I've got all these little spotty bits of fabric, and I'm just stitching them together any old how. The only thing that unites these fabrics is the fact that they're spotty. I don't mind about the colour. I don't mind about what kind of spots they are. So what I'm doing here is I'm making fabric. So I'll keep sewing little pieces and pieces onto here so that they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I will sew the whole thing together. And then my plan is, if I do this how I want to, I'm going to hand quilt it. And I'll hand quilt some lovely quilting stitches using this stuff, which is the Aurifil 12 that I like to use. And I've got this in all sorts of beautiful crayon box colours. I've got lots of this. So we'll get onto that bit a bit later. But for now, what I'm doing is I'm making fabric. So I'll show you how I'm doing that. So I'm just going to pick, that's quite a big piece in fact. So if that's quite a big piece, I might sew two of those together. Let's see. This is where there's no real rhyme nor reason to it. You just pick them up at random, stitch them together. And then give them a little press. So it's like that. And then I think the only rule I'll have for myself is that two colours shouldn't be next to each other. So what about if we move that round there? Put those two together. Yeah, that works. straighten that off. I don't mind having a little tiny piece like that. That'll just get lost in a seam somewhere. Let's give this one a press. This is a lovely spotty fabric. I've got so many beautiful fabrics, and I think that's what this project's all about, is just getting bits of fabric out of the drawer that are pretty much forgotten. How about that, if I sew that to that? Yep. There we go. Let's see, what else have we got? Oh, what's up there? What's up here? I'll take this one and maybe this one. Does that fit there? Nope, needs a little bit more on the bottom of it. Okay, let's have you. There we go. So that looks like that now, and we'll give that a good press. So I'm just sorting the spotty pieces into tiny pieces, slightly bigger pieces, and then quite big pieces. And what I'm going to do now is make these tiny crumbs into slightly bigger bits of fabric, and then just by piecing them all together, with the only rule really being that no two the same go together, then I'll start making fabric like this. And we'll see how far I get with my idea to make this about 14 or 15 inches square. These all will have been something for a project at some point. If not the terry blocks, then something else. These are 2.5 inch squares. They were for something, but I can't remember what. Okay then. Let's make fabric. Those two are nice together. And then I'll just press these, sew them to each other, trim them, press them and go again. So that's what I'm going to be doing now for the rest of the afternoon. Tiny, tiny scraps of fabric. These really should have ended up in the bin, they're so small. I mean, look. They're very small. But they've got a second life with me now. So when I make something like that, I'll trim this up now. Let's move that to there. Got them all in nice little piles down here. I'll just angle you down. That's all right to have that bit of waste, I think. Okay, that will do for another piece of fabric. What about those two together? Yeah, that works. So it's much later now, and I've got my piece of repurposed fabric all made out of spots. I like how it's come together. It took a lot longer than I thought it would, but no scrap was left behind. And now I'm going to make the pouch now, but I want to hand quilt it first. So I've got the wadding on the back here, and I found this lovely piece of spotty fabric which is going to be the lining. So I'm going to put, it measures around about 15 inches, maybe a tiny bit less. But what I'm going to do now then is stitch all the way around the outside, but just leave a little open place here so I can turn it inside out, which will then give me almost like a placemat or something like that, because then I can hand quilt it and stitch together the sides. And I'm going to do all that by hand. Okay then, so now the other thing that I need, if we look at this one here, I need this little tie here that goes at the top and wraps round. I haven't made that yet, but I've got an idea about how I want to do that, so we'll do that later. But for now, this is just a quick whiz all the way round. Some sort of a 1/4 of an inch probably. Remembering to leave that much. So if you're tempted to make one of these, you don't have to piece all your little scraps together. It's quite nice to do that, and I think the result's going to be lovely, but you could just use 2 pieces of fabric. That would make life a lot easier, wouldn't it? Well, for no good reason, we'll leave the gap here. About that much, that's all it needs to be. Just so I can turn it the right way round. Now, of course, when I made this one in India, I didn't have a sewing machine. I stitched every little bit by hand, and that was the wonderful part about it, was just doing this great slow stitching. I loved it. So I'm going to trim round now and then cut the bulk off the corners here, so that when I turn it the right way round there won't be too much bulk there. And then we'll take it over to the ironing board and give it a good press. Get this part first. I'll show you when it's quilted. finished stitching all the running stitches on this piece now, and now I'm attaching this little tie that I made, and it was terribly simple. I just took an inch wide piece of this spotty fabric, folded it in, and did some lovely green running stitches over it. I didn't measure how long it was just kind of long enough. And now I'm sewing it onto the top corner here, and I'm sewing it in a certain way. I'll show you when I close it up that one bit's longer than the other, and you'll see why when we get to that point. But where this tie meets the work, I thought I would put a little button on here. I thought that might look quite nice. And so I've got my mum's button tin, which was my grandma's button tin, and then my mum's, and now mine. And so I thought I'd have a good rake through here and see if I can find a button. There's bound to be one in here that can go, oh, there's a nice one, that can go on this little corner here. Just there, not that one. Let's keep looking. I keep looking at the green ones, thinking they might be nice. As the inside's sort of greeny yellow. Oh, it's such a memory looking through these things. Oh, that's a nice one. Let's see how that looks. Nope, a bit too big. So many. And oh, that's a nice one. Where did that one go? That's one of those little tiny buttons with a shank on the end. I don't think that would work, but it is a nice button. I'll keep that one out. It doesn't have to be green. Well, it could be any colour under the sun, looking at all of these here. It's about this big red one. Nope. There it is. That little button there. I don't know why. Of all the buttons I could have chosen, I used to do this when I was a little girl. Just ratchet through the button. Oh, there's a pink one. No, I think we'll go for that little green one. Okay, so now the little button's on. Put that back down there. Now I'm going to sew together the sides that give it its structure. It's quite simple. Just goes together like this. And then I'm going to stitch these together. How am I going to do that? Let's look at the original. Ah, right, I see what I did. It's quite hard to see because the stitching is pink, the same as the rest of it, but it's like a little herringbone stitch. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Choosing this green thread because it looks lovely on the inside. And then we'll just go for it. All finished. So I'm going to just try it out. A couple of pencils, some threads, my thimble. I'm always losing my thimble. Scissors, they can go in there. And what about this as well? So it's my little sewing pouch. And the longer one goes round a couple of times and then ties with the shorter one. You could make one of those easily, couldn't you? If you do, tag me on Instagram because I'd love to see it. Kate at the Last Homely House. So I hope you've enjoyed that little video getting started with a project for the new year. Give us a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe, and I will see you next time here with another project.